Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Election Day is just around the corner for voters in Wicomico and Worcester counties. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In Wicomico County, voters will be choosing a county executive, while in Worcester County, it could tip the balance on a sports complex near Berlin. Then there is the fight over the school boards, with what appears to be an insurgency, particularly over the kinds of books that are on the shelves of the school libraries. In our studio this morning, we have Greg Bassett, editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent, and on the phone, Stephen Green. He's the editor and publisher of the Maryland Coast Dispatch. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
So first, I want to take up the battle over the Republican nomination for Wicomico County Executive. And in that race, we've got Julie Giordano, who is running against the acting county executive, John Bassett. Greg, what are we looking at here in terms of these two candidates?
This is one of those classic things among Republicans. We've got John Bassett, who's sort of the establishment Republican. I don't want to say he's not conservative, because he certainly is. And then you've got Julie Giordano, who's a school teacher in Wicomico County, who is a little bit more to the right. You guess you could call her a Trumper. She's sort of been aligned with the Wynn guy, who is not the Wynn, the Cox guy, who's running for governor in Maryland. So it's that right wing of the party that she's aligned with, whereas John is more of the traditional kind of Republican.
So in terms of Giordano, are we looking at somebody who really represents the Trump wing of the party? And in terms of Republican politics, are we looking at a situation where the party itself is being divided? I know in Anne Arundel County, we've got some situation where some people are trying to out-Trump some other people, traditional Republicans. Is there a division now going on within the party, you think?
Yeah, I think they would argue it's not necessarily a loyalty toward Trump so much as it's a loyalty toward the issues that he and that group sort of represent. So, you get into the schools, traditional values in schools. She's big on having a strong leader in the county executive seat. She's very pro-economic development. She seems to follow. She's pro small business, but there are some of the social issues that she engages in and has engaged in that perhaps John Bassett on the other side of the Republican Party has not.
I mean, he seems to be much more of a technocrat.
He is. He's you could argue he's a bureaucrat. He's a classic bureaucrat because he's been a town manager. He was a state police officer for a long time. So does he lack vision? Maybe in a way, but he walks a fine line. I just wrote this the other day. He was appointed to this seat as acting county executive. He doesn't have a constituency that he can cite to, back up his decisions. Like, well, people voted for me for this reason, and this is why we're going to do this. He has to please the people on the council as well as chart his own course. So it's a really difficult road, I think, that he walks.
Also wanted to talk about the other guy in the Democratic primary, that is Ernie Davis. He's been on the council for a very long period of time, African-American. Give us a sense about who he is, and are there any odds that he might, say, win the county executive position, given the conservative flavor of this county?
Yeah, Ernie is the 1st District Representative, which is the majority district in Wicomico County. He's held that seat, I think, for 2 terms now, and he is leaving to run for county executive. He's a classic Democrat. He's a small business owner. He's a retired police officer. He's very quiet in the council meetings, but he's been the swing vote on many, many issues. When you have these 4-3 votes, Ernie has been really the power holder in making a lot of decisions for Wicomico County. The biggest vote he was involved in the last year was this tax cut, not a cut, but a tax delay for the big high-rise project that's going to be built, that's being built now in downtown Salisbury. Ernie was the swing vote on that, and he's been the swing vote on a lot of these issues.
I want to turn to the at-large seats on the kind of council. We've got obviously John Cannon. He's been around a long time, but on the Democratic side, Brad Gillis, seems to be more of a business type, and then Megan Outen, environmentalist. How do you size that up, and is there any threat to John Cannon?
Well, they're both Democrats. Gillis and Outen are Democrats.
Right.
Brad Gillis certainly comes from the development family. Palmer Gillis is his dad of Gillis Gilkerson. He's been a very visionary developer for downtown Salisbury, has really believed in downtown, done a lot to really improve Salisbury. So he and Megan have a free ride to November, so they'll be competing against the Republican winners then. John Cannon has some people in his field that he's going to have to compete against, which could make it awkward. Only 2 Republicans will advance. There are 4 Republicans running in that. The other candidates are Catherine Jones and James Wynn and Duke. I forget Duke's last name.
That's all right. Go ahead.
But he is also running, Duke Schweinlein, and I'm sure I pronounced it incorrectly. So only 2 of those people will advance.
Are they any threat to him?
Well, I think John will probably win because he has the tradition and people know him. He's the council president. He's certainly well known. The question is who will finish second and advance to the November ballot.
The other race I wanted to look at briefly is the 1st District, African-American District. Got Amber Green, she seems to be a young progressive, against the former Salisbury City Council member, Shani Shields, who's much more traditional. How do you size that up? Is this an age thing? Is it generational?
Well, Amber, certainly she's very dynamic. She leads a local group which supports young children, and she works with kids, and she's very inspiring. But there's another candidate in that race, Monica Brooks, who is certainly well known to all of us. You may remember, Don, that she was very involved in that CAFO issue when they were going to develop some chicken houses there on the west side, probably 5-6 years ago now. And she's had an environmental bent too, and she is pretty she's pretty dynamic. So, whether she gets her name out there and is able to be as well known as Shani and as Amber, we'll have to see. But she's really impressed me as a candidate. Is
this basically going to be a ground game kind of thing, a recognition?
I think so, yeah. Especially in that district. The turnout is always low there. And Democrats maybe not being as excited about things, that could have an effect. Shani actually lost her seat on the city council a bunch of years ago. She was a good council person. I think she did a good job. Maybe it's just time for Shani to go in the minds of the voters. But in that district, I think Shani won by 7 votes one time and then lost by 11 the other time. So it's always razor thin. And I think this will be the same situation with 3 people running in that district.
Steve, I want to turn to you in the Worcester County Commission races. And in particular, obviously, there is the sports complex near Berlin, which seems to be one of the key issues in this. First of all, give us a sense about the issues that are surrounding that sports complex.
Sure. Yes, the sports complex has become, one of the pivotal issues in this election. In that, one of the chief proponents of the sports complex for many, many years is retiring Commissioner Bud Church, who represents District 3. The county commissioners back in April, after a spirited public hearing, voted 4-3 to move forward with the property acquisition of about 100 acres. It's west of Stephen Cater High School, right on Route 50. So that's a visible farmland right now between the Tractor Supply Shopping Center and Cater High School. 4-3. So this election, while the vote has already been taken, this election will, because there was a petition to referendum that was successful, has been deemed successful, will put the matter on the ballot for voters in November, of course, not in next week's primary in November. But what's been interesting to learn throughout this election preview season has been that the majority will almost undoubtedly flip after the election, and actually after the primary, because Bud Church is retiring, and 3 of the 4 commissioners that are candidates that are seeking to replace him have come out against the current sports complex proposal. Now, the main line over this way is that everybody loves the concept of a sports complex. They see the value in the economic development, the tourism, the season extenders. Many people, find that to be a value. Obviously, the Ocean City business community, we all see that. Those of us with kids see it as a recreational opportunity. The problem that many people see with it is, one, the process, in that there's a contract on the property before the vote was taken, and 2, the location. The location is a tough one for many people to stomach, in that it's right off of Route 50. State Highway has said there will not be ingress or egress granted from Route 50, which puts the entrance off of Seahawk Road and or Flower Street, entrance exit, and that's a major concern to nearby residents, but not just a NIMBY approach here. It really is the town of Berlin is very concerned because they have not been involved in this process. The property that's under consideration is not part of the town of Berlin now. It would need to be annexed if the county would want to, say, add an indoor, facility to that project. It could be developed as just fields with spray irrigation. But if there was to be an indoor facility added, which is something that, is said that it would be key to it being successful, it would need to be annexed in the town of Berlin. Thus far, the town of Berlin says, no way, it's not going to happen. But they're also carrying some animosity with them in that they haven't been included in the process. So, the key piece, I think, to this puzzle is, we'll see what the referendum does. But another thing that came out recently was that the bond ordinance that would fund the development of this project does not include the acquisition of the property. So just to unpack that real quick, it's about $7 million to buy the property, but that is not included in the bond that was approved by the county commissioners in that controversial 4-3 vote. So basically, there's a lot of questions. We don't know where that money is going to come from to buy it. There's been talk about, just taking it out of fund balance, which is pretty healthy in Worcester County, or potentially using casino proceeds. It just continues to be this, we've opined on this numerous times. It's just, love the idea, hate the process. And the candidates that are running are all kind of on that same pathway. So it's been, it has been one of the big issues surrounding, by the fact that the petitioners were out collecting all these signatures and extremely successful.
This seems to put somebody like the Ocean City Mayor Rick Meehan at a disadvantage, because I know he was at the meeting that which they approved the bonds, thought he had a great victory, but it seems he put him at odds with, say, the city of Berlin.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think, it has become this, it's very divisive. It has become the, big, awesome tourism Ocean City against these smaller towns. And, Rick Meehan, he sees from tourism perspective, I mean, this could very well be a great shoulder extender. This travel tournaments in September, October, March, April. I mean, look, obviously they're weather dependent, but there's a model out there, across the country that youth sports is a growing industry. So he sees that as, a major plus for Ocean City. But I would suspect, and this has been interesting actually over the last couple of months, we're not hearing much from Ocean City. It's actually really only been Councilman John Gehrig who has come to some of the community meetings, kind of saying why they think it's important. But Ocean City has kind of left the county out on its own on an island right now on this, and it's there's 4 majority commissioners that are standing by, along with the Chief Administrative Officer Weston Young, who hails over there from Wicomico County and has experience with these sorts of large complexes, maybe not to this degree, but they're out kind of on an island right now defending it. And as far as what's the referendum going to look like, it is as divisive as I can remember. I mean, I think if I had to make a guess, I would guess that it will pass, but narrowly. But it's also important to know that this just allows the project to be developed. The county still has to buy the property. That's not included in the bond, which is a little bit, has to have been an oversight on the county's end.
Is there any sense about why the city of Berlin was not included in this negotiation, or is it just that the city itself was not particularly inclined to go along with this?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's not that they weren't inclined yet. It's just the county's perspective has been, we would deal with that at another time, or we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to acquire the property first, and then talk to the town, and then talk to State Highway. Now, I mean, I think that's a foolhardy plan. I think that there certainly should have been. I mean, I was thinking you're trying to build consensus here. This would have been, there's just so many questions that are unanswered, and that's where the county is vulnerable. I don't think that stance of, we'll get it first, then build consensus, or talk to other people about our options is the right way to go. And it seems to be the candidates that are up for election next week are jumping all over that point.
I want to turn to the school board elections, which appear to be animated particularly by the books on the school library shelves. And one of those books has attracted a lot of attention. at least in this election, has been All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. He's an African-American, and he talks about his awareness of being gay. The Worcester County School District decided to keep the work on their high school library shelves, while the administration in Wicomico County decided to remove it. Katie Addis is a candidate for Worcester County's 6th District on the Board of Education. She objected to the book, dismissing the argument that the school should provide books that reflect the experience of students.
I think there's a certain standard that's set for public education. No one is taking those books out of public libraries. No one's taking those books off of Amazon or Barnes & Noble. But for that book to be accessible to other kids where parents don't feel comfortable with their kids reading this book, they don't know if their child is checking that book out of the library at school because they're not there with them. And that book in particular is meant for young adults. In my eyes, there are no young adults. They're all minors. Up until after 18 years old, that is when they become a young adult. There are no young adults in high school. And my justification with that as well is if we're going to make that the rule instead of the exception, then there's going to be a lot of books or different things that kids see themselves in or identify themselves in, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It means that we have to have a much higher standard.
In Wicomico County, Karen Miller is a retired school teacher. She's running for District 2 on the Board of Education. While expressing discomfort with the book during a candidate's forum, she would not necessarily have had a problem with the book being on the high school library shelves.
Now, I've never read that book, so I can't speak to the context of the whole book. Listening to that scene did make me very uncomfortable. What I have continued to hear in the community since then is that we have pornographic material in our schools, and I don't think that that book as a whole would fall under the definition of pornographic material, although that one section was very troubling to listen to. It was also in a high school library, and high school seniors are 18 years old. So it wasn't used instructionally. I would have probably had a problem with it being used instructionally. It was in a library, and it dealt with a specific group of students.
Again, we just heard from Katie Addis, a candidate for District 6 in the Worcester County Board of Education, and Karen Miller, a candidate for District 2 on the Wicomico County Board of Education. Gray, I want to turn to the Wicomico Board of Education and this group called Delmarva Parent Teachers Coalition. Who are they? Why did they come to the fore now?
Yeah, it's a right-wing, Republican-oriented school group, and they believe in the traditional values of the schools. So they believe in things like the cursive writing. They want parents to have say over curriculum. They're very suspicious of transparency within the system. There are a lot of the people who come to the school boards and make complaints about things like the book that you're talking about.
So is this a group that has a lot of clout, do you think?
We'll find out in the election, because they're fielding a bunch of candidates in Wicomico County at least, and certainly in Worcester. But we've heard them coming to school board for the last 2 years, and they have a lot of concerns. Whether their concerns are justified or not, I'm not sure. My kids are just out of the school system here in Wicomico. And I felt like that we had great access to curriculum and our teachers. It was really a matter of how much we invested our own time in what our kids were doing so that we knew what they were up to. But kids are kids, and if they want to see this content, they're going to find a way to see the content on their phones. It's just a question of whether we want to, as a society, I guess, condone, or appear to be condoning these books, in the school libraries.
Because in addition to the books, they criticize critical race theory, for example, which is not taught in schools, but identity politics, progressive education. They suggest that homeschooling, private schools are better. Is this a general pushback, do you think, culturally in terms of what's going on in the country?
Yeah, I think what I think personally, this has nothing to do with the kind of reporting that we do, but I just think they're disconnected from the changes that are going on in the system. So when they say they want to instill discipline back in the schools, well, there is discipline in the schools, but not all the kids follow discipline. It's not really that much different than it was when we were all in school. We had manners. Kids don't necessarily have as many manners today, but you can't blame the system for that. So much of it comes from the home and the parents, and really, as we all know with all the statistics, the more engaged the parents are, the better the kids do.
Because one of the things, finally, along the same lines, in terms of All Boys Aren't Blue, it was a superintendent who pulled the books in Wicomico County. And one of the things I found fascinating was one of the candidates, who was an incumbent, emphasized that it was not the board who put this book in the library in the first place. And even though perhaps she might have said no, what does it tell you about this volatility of this issue, that she wanted to put some distance there?
Yeah, that it's intense, and that they're feeling the pressure from these people. They want to do the right thing. You don't want to alienate people for no reason at all. But at the same time, you want kids to have access to all the information that's out there so they can form themselves and they can make their own judgments.
We also had a situation, apparently, with a video that came out of a young man, I guess 15 years old, with racial slurs. I guess it was a pellet gun. And it was a son, actually, of one of the people who sits on the education board. What are you hearing so far?
Yeah, that's a really awkward situation. That actually came from an app that I didn't know existed. So it's an app, and I forget what it's called, but you can only access the video if you're in the actual school, which happened to be Parkside High School. And the kid is saying kind of like dumb kid stuff, but it's very biting and it's racist and it's kind of scary. And because he has a gun in the video, it's even more scary. At school board, people have come forward and they have complained that the school system is not doing enough to discipline this kid. The kid was charged, is facing some charges from the sheriff's office. They've investigated it. The case is still ongoing. The parent who was on the school board, who was running for re-election, actually gave an address at last night's school board meeting in which she apologized, said that she was not going to resign, that she was going to continue to run, that it's a family matter, and they're trying to deal with their kid just for everyone to be as patient as possible. But it was very alarming to see this and to know it's going on within our schools. But it's by no means isolated.
I want to turn to the school board elections in Worcester County that appear to, at least a couple of candidates, Steve, that have concerns over books, school curriculum, Katie Addis and Bill Buchanan. What's going on there? I think there are only, 3 races that are open. What's the situation with that?
Right, and it's very similar to what Greg was detailing in Wicomico County. Over here in Worcester County, our school board elections, and I'm sorry if I don't know about Wicomico, are nonpartisan, so these seats will not be decided until November. But as you mentioned, Miss Addis, she's made that a major talking point of her campaign. Unlike Wicomico, Worcester County Board of Education, as you mentioned, did not remove the book, really citing the potential for a Pandora's box of more books, which ought to be interesting to follow in Wicomico. I'm sure they're going to find some other books as well that contain material like this. The book that we're talking about here, if you Google it, it's been targeted all over the country, and it's a part of a right-wing extreme movement. In many ways, I think the majority of citizens find that to be a little bit unfair. Over here, parents can say if there are certain books that they don't want their kid to, check out. That could be one of them. And from what I understand from the reporting, that that was a book that the school system did see repeated some more requests once it was brought to their attention. That book was read out loud in the school board meeting, and who wouldn't feel uncomfortable about it, knowing that students would be able to check it out. But it's become a political hot button issue. Really over here, it's the change agents versus status quo, and change agents feel like the superintendent has all the control, and the school board just goes along with him. And I'll probably argue that is the case in many, many education systems. The superintendent is or really any board that you serve on, the paid person, deserves a bit of credibility. And
do you see this? Yeah. Do you see this as spreading to other books, to push for other books to be pulled from the library? As you said a moment ago, right now we're talking about All Boys Aren't Blue, but I know in Wicomico County they're complaining about another book, which I read, which is fairly benign, I thought, but this does seem as if there's a movement to try to push further. And if, for instance, these individuals get on the board, is there a chance that the board then might really directly intervene, or is there enough yet?
Oh, no, I think, yeah, you're right. If they get on the board, and that's the fear, they will certainly bring that topic back up. They can direct the superintendent's actions on this. So, yeah, and I do. Now, Worcester County, it'll be interesting to see, since Worcester County did not remove it. But I think, Wicomico County, they have opened up a Pandora's box, right or wrong. They're definitely the precedent has been set now. So over here, I personally don't think that, while it's a conservative Republican area, the school board members that have kind of made this their issue have kind of shown that they are towards the extreme side of the right wing of the conservative Republican Party. So I personally don't think they will get into office. I don't see that happening. But if they do get in, oh, absolutely, it will be probably one of the first issues that they bring up.
Finally, I want to turn to something else that actually came up yesterday, which was that apparently Andy Harris, congressman, it was revealed during the January 6th hearings this week that in a meeting with other congressional members at the White House, he was there to discuss the option of then Vice President Mike Pence rejecting the election results. Greg, what do you know about this? I know it just came down yesterday. I was watching the hearings, and as soon as his name came up, and this long list actually of the people who attended, it really struck me. And I know that Harris has declined to call the storming of the Capitol on January 6th an insurrection. That's one of the reasons he voted against some of the measures on the Capitol Hill. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to hear what happened, but he was in a meeting in which the memo from the president's outside attorney had a strategy for perhaps overturning the voter count on January 6th. Harris was there. He participated in that with a lot of the other like-minded Republicans, and it was a meeting at the White House. He was named in that. His opponent, his Democratic opponent, if everything goes as we expect in the primary, Heather Mazar, made the point that she wants to know immediately whether he was one of the people who asked for a pardon. You may remember that the person who testified 2 weeks ago to the committee said that several House members had asked for pardons, and she wants to know more about his role and all that. Harris has not said much so far, but he has been very devoted to Donald Trump, and he was in the meeting.
Steve, what do you hear? What's your impression?
Well, I'm just really interested on this specific point to see how Harris does in the obviously in the general election. With redistricting, Heather Mazar, she's potentially could be the first real qualified challenger. And I say qualified because with the redistricting, it changes things up. Harris has cruised easily to every incumbent run. So I'm interested to see all these little things. He's adding up. Obviously, the Trump alliance, this week's news, the views on gun control and abortion as well. I mean, these are all things that I'm looking at, really anxious to see if the changing dynamics of the district impact his easy road that he's had. So that's really, this was just another feather. I think that, it certainly helps her, and she played it. I thought what Greg mentioned there, played it as well, seek more information. And he has not shown that he's really willing to provide more information, in my opinion.
As I understand it, the district, when it was redrawn, that it actually tended to be a bit more conservative than the original district. I mean, in essence, the Democrats gave up after a series of court challenges. Do you think that's going to matter to the voters here in terms of whether or not he was there sitting in the Oval Office talking about this, or is this to simply reinforce his popularity with the base, Steve?
Yeah, it might reinforce his popularity, to tell you the truth. The fact that he was there, unless more comes out over the coming day or months, really, I actually had a little bit of a different take on that redistricting, but I understand where you are with it. Clearly, as you know, the Democrats went after that district, court challenge, blocked it. Now, you may be right, and we'll see if he has the easier road or as easy of a road. I don't think this week's news, honestly, really changes a ton with it, unless more comes out over the coming weeks and months.
Well, we've been speaking with Greg Bassett. He's the editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent newspaper. And on the phone has been Stephen Green. He's the editor and publisher of the Maryland Coast Dispatch. And appreciate both of you taking the time to talk with us this morning.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you. Good to talk with you all.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening. Delmarva Today with Don Rush.